at the screen, Auntie. The transfers match the dates you were here.
No, that's not possible. I didn't do this.
In the coastal city of Calabar, where the Atlantic Ocean kissed the land every morning like a lover returning home, life moved with rhythm, laughter, and hidden secrets, and it was in this city of warm winds and louder dreams that Edidiong was born, a young woman whose presence felt like light finding its way into darkness, because Edidiong was not just beautiful in face but radiant in spirit, the kind of person whose smile entered a room before her body did, the kind of girl elders pointed at and said, "This one carries good fortune in her shadow," and wherever she went, people felt ease, because joy followed her like a loyal dog. She lived modestly with her family, but her dreams were large, stretching far beyond the narrow streets of Calabar, reaching across oceans to lands she had only seen in books. And standing beside her through the years was Zanab, her closest friend, a girl whose laughter rang sharp and bright like glass chimes in the wind, whose teeth gleamed white like freshly cracked coconut, and whose friendship seemed as permanent as the old mango tree in their schoolyard, because from secondary school days they had been inseparable, eating from the same plate, sharing secrets whispered under classroom desks, walking the same dusty roads home. And people said seeing one without the other was like seeing day without sun, yet the elders also say that the river that looks calm on the surface may hide dangerous currents beneath, and Edidiong, in her kindness, had forgotten this wisdom, because while her heart was open like the morning sky, Zanab's heart had begun to collect shadows quietly, unnoticed, like clouds forming behind the sun. Then came the Monday morning in September that changed everything, a morning bright and loud with possibility, when Edidiong received an email that made her heart explode with joy, for she had been awarded a prestigious international scholarship to study abroad in Canada, the land of snow, learning, and second chances, and her happiness spilled out of her like water from a broken pot, lifting her feet off the ground, making her laugh and cry at the same time, and the first person she called, without hesitation, was Zanab, because joy seeks the person it trusts the most. And over the phone she shouted the news with a voice shaking like leaves in harmattan wind, while Zanab responded with sweetness dripping like honey, congratulating her, inviting her over to celebrate, dancing with words that sounded supportive and warm, even though behind that voice, something dark shifted, because Zanab too had applied for the same scholarship and failed, and jealousy, that silent snake, had begun to coil itself around her heart, tightening slowly, patiently, while Edidiong ran joyfully toward her friend's house, unaware that sometimes the arms that welcome you are the same arms preparing to push you down, and thus, in the city where the ocean sang every morning, the seed of betrayal was planted, watered by envy, and hidden behind smiles so convincing that even truth could not see through them yet. In the days that followed Edidiong's great news, Calabar seemed brighter than usual, as if the city itself was celebrating with her, yet inside Zanab's heart a different season had arrived, a dry and bitter season where joy could not grow, because jealousy, once it enters the heart, does not knock. It breaks the door and sits like a king, and though Zanab smiled wider than ever, laughed louder than before, and wrapped Edidiong in hugs that felt warm on the outside, her thoughts were boiling like pepper soup left too long on fire, for every congratulation she offered tasted like sand in her mouth, and every mention of Canada stabbed her chest like a thorn hidden in cloth. Still, she played her role perfectly, becoming even more present in Edidiong's life, calling her every morning, visiting every evening, praising her destiny and telling her how proud she was, because the elders say when the lizard wants to deceive you, it first nods its head in agreement, and Edidiong, whose heart was clean and trusting, saw only love where danger was slowly sharpening its teeth. Zanab helped her fill out visa forms, guided her through embassy requirements, went shopping with her for thick winter jackets she would soon need, laughing as they imagined snow falling on Edidiong's hair. And at night they practiced interview questions together, Zanab correcting her pronunciation, clapping for her progress, saying, "You are made for greatness," while inside her mind another voice whispered, "If I cannot have it, neither will you," and that voice grew stronger each day. It was during one of those long evenings, sitting side by side with Edidiong's laptop glowing between them, that fate revealed a dangerous secret, for as Edidiong typed quickly, focused on her application, Zanab's eyes, sharp like a hawk's, caught the rhythm of her fingers, memorized the pattern, counted the keys, and before the night ended, the password to Edidiong's email was no longer a secret, and sometimes, my people. The greatest disasters come not from strangers but from those close enough to touch your keyboard. From that moment, Zainab's behavior became almost angelic, bringing food uninvited, sending encouraging messages, reminding Edidiong to rest and pray, and Edidiong, overwhelmed with gratitude, told everyone how blessed she was to have such a friend, not knowing that sugar ants gather where sweetness is, and Zainab's sweetness was bait, not love. At night, when Kalaba slept and the moon hid behind clouds like it did not want to witness wickedness, Zainab lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind spinning like a pot on fire, replaying the rejection email she herself had received, the humiliation, the quiet envy, until bitterness hardened her heart like dried clay. And on one such night, when conscience grew weak and jealousy grew bold, Zainab rose from her bed, opened her laptop, and logged into Edidiong's email, her fingers moving carefully, confidently, as if guided by something darker. Then thought, and there she saw it, the scholarship email, shining like gold, confirming everything Edidiong would become, and instead of closing it, she made a choice that would change both their lives forever, for she composed a new message pretending to be Edidiong, her words cold and calculated, informing the scholarship board that the offer was no longer needed, that another opportunity had appeared, that she was withdrawing, and after sending it, she deleted every trace, every response, every confirmation, wiping evidence clean like footprints washed away by rain. And when she finally closed the laptop, a strange calm settled over her, the calm that comes when a person has crossed a line they can never uncross. The next morning, Zainab woke with a smile that returned easily to her face, hugging Edidiong as usual, comforting her when days passed without replies, telling her not to worry, assuring her delays were normal, while inside she celebrated quietly, because the elders warn us that when a snake bites you, it does not announce itself, it stays still and lets the poison work slowly. And thus, while Edidiong waited in hope, trusting in time and God, her dream was already bleeding quietly in the dark, murdered by the very hands she believed would protect it. As days melted into weeks, the excitement that once danced in Edidiong's heart slowly gave way to confusion, then to fear, because silence can be louder than bad news, and the silence from the scholarship office screamed at her every night, echoing in her chest like an unanswered prayer, for no emails arrived, no interview dates appeared, and no instructions followed. And though Zainab continued to reassure her with soft words and gentle pats on the back, telling her that international processes were slow and patience was a virtue, Edidiong's spirit began to sense that something was wrong, because hope, when delayed, starts to ache like an old wound. And each morning she refreshed her inbox with shaking fingers only to find nothing, while Zainab watched quietly, offering sympathy seasoned with hidden relief. Finally, when worry grew heavier than sleep, Edidiong gathered her courage and called the scholarship office directly, her voice trembling like a drum beaten too softly, and the woman on the line sounded surprised, then confused, then cautious, as she explained that according to their records, Edidiong had personally withdrawn from the program weeks earlier, a statement that hit Edidiong like a slap in the dark, stealing her breath, making her knees weak, because she knew with every fiber of her being that she had sent no such message. And as the woman read the email aloud, quoting words Edidiong had never written, her world began to spin like a ceiling fan on full speed, her future collapsing in her hands like sand slipping through fingers. And when the call ended, she sat on the floor staring at nothing, her dreams scattered, her trust shattered, asking the same question again and again like a broken record. Who could do this to me? Naturally, the first person she ran to was Zainab, tears soaking her voice as she explained everything, and Zainab responded with perfect shock, gasping, shouting, swearing by the sun and moon that such wickedness could not go unpunished, calling Edidiong to come over immediately so they could solve it together. And Edidiong obeyed, because when pain blinds you, you run toward the familiar even if the familiar holds a knife. Zainab welcomed her with open arms, cold water, soothing words, and false promises, cursing the unknown villain with convincing anger, while Edidiong cried into her shoulder, not knowing she was being comforted by the very storm that destroyed her harvest. Yet fate, which sleeps but never dies, had already begun to shift the balance, for Edidiong had a younger brother named Yuam, a quiet boy with sharp eyes and a mind trained in logic, a student of computer science who understood machines the way farmers understand soil. And when Edidiong finally explained everything to him, he did not panic or curse the heavens, but simply said, "Sister, let me look." Because wisdom often speaks softly, Yuam accessed her email, studied the login history, traced the digital footprints left behind, and soon discovered that the withdrawal email had been sent from a different location entirely, not from Edidiong's phone or home, but from another address within Kalaba. And when he followed the trail further, his face hardened like stone, because the signal led straight to Marion Road, the very place where Zainab lived, and when he spoke this truth aloud, the room fell silent, heavy and unbearable, as Edidiong shook her head in denial, refusing to accept what her heart was not ready to carry, repeating Zainab's name as if saying it enough times would make it innocent again, but evidence does not bend to emotion, and as Yuam laid out dates, times, and locations like pieces of a puzzle, the image became clear, sharp, and merciless, revealing that the snake had been sharing their fire all along. Edidiong's pain transformed then, not into rage, but into resolve, because the elders say when you want to catch a monkey, you do not shout in the forest, and so she wiped her tears, swallowed her heartbreak, and decided to act with wisdom rather than impulse, unaware that the silence she would now wear was louder than any scream, and that Zainab, in her confidence, had already begun to walk freely into a trap woven patiently with truth, timing, and calm. After the truth revealed itself like a wound exposed to air, Edidiong did something that surprised even her own heart, for instead of confronting Zainab with fire and noise, she wrapped herself in silence and patience, because wisdom taught her that revenge rushed is justice ruined. And so she continued her visits, continued her tears, continued leaning on Zainab's shoulder as if nothing had changed, while inside her chest a different woman had awakened, a woman whose kindness now walked hand in hand with caution. Zainab, unaware that the veil had been lifted, played her role with confidence, comforting Edidiong, feeding her words of false hope, swearing loudly against whoever had destroyed her future, and the more she pretended, the deeper she sank, for lies are like mud, the more you move, the dirtier you become. Quietly, Edidiong contacted the scholarship board again, not with anger but with clarity, explaining the hacking, the betrayal, and the digital evidence Yuam had gathered. And the officials listened carefully, impressed not only by the proof but by her composure, promising to investigate and reopen her case if the facts were confirmed, and this gave Edidiong strength, because even when the door seems closed, truth keeps a key hidden somewhere. Still, she wanted more than restoration, she wanted exposure, not out of cruelty, but because a snake left unexposed returns to bite again, so she and Yuam crafted a plan woven with patience, timing, and psychology, knowing that fear is louder than accusation. Edidiong called Zainab one evening with a heavy voice, telling her she had finally accepted defeat, that the scholarship was truly gone, but she had received a job offer in Lagos, a prestigious one. And Zainab's excitement leaked through her forced sympathy like water through cracked clay, though she tried to sound supportive, because bad news to the victim often sounds like music to the betrayer. Then Edidiong added the final piece, casually mentioning that the company planned a full background check, including emails and digital history, and at that moment, Zainab's confidence collapsed inward, her breath catching, her skin turning pale, sweat forming on her forehead despite the cool air, because guilt always recognizes its own shadow. And suddenly she began encouraging Edidiong to recontact the scholarship board, urging her not to give up, pushing solutions too quickly, revealing panic disguised as care. The hook had caught, and Edidiong, calm as still water, pulled gently, letting Zainab's fear do the rest of the work, and days later, Edidiong announced a small family gathering at her home, claiming she wanted to make a final announcement about her future, inviting friends, relatives, neighbors, and of course Zainab, who arrived dressed beautifully, smiling confidently, even bringing gifts, because deception often wears its best clothes on the day of judgment. The living room filled with murmurs and expectation, laughter and curiosity. Until Edidiong stood up, Yuam beside her with a laptop in hand, and the room fell silent as a prayer before dawn, and she spoke slowly, steadily, explaining how her scholarship dream had been destroyed by someone she trusted, how her heart had been broken not by failure but by betrayal. And as people murmured in shock and anger, Zainab shook her head sadly, even whispering prayers against the unknown villain, but then Edidiong's voice sharpened like a blade drawn from its sheath, and she said the words that froze the room, declaring that the person responsible was present among them, and before anyone could react, Yuam opened the laptop, projecting dates, locations, and digital trails that pointed clearly to one address, one house, one truth, and when Marion Road was spoken aloud, the air cracked. Zainab jumped to her feet, denying, trembling, protesting loudly, but denial collapses when truth stands tall, and as relatives shouted, neighbors gasped, and elders shook their heads. Zainab's mask shattered completely, revealing fear, guilt, and desperation beneath, and in that moment, Edidiong understood something powerful, that justice does not need shouting when evidence speaks clearly, and patience, when paired with truth, becomes a weapon sharper than anger. The moment Zainab's name was dragged into the open like a hidden corpse uncovered by floodwaters, the room erupted into chaos, voices colliding like stones thrown into a metal pot, neighbors gasping, relatives shouting, elders shaking their heads in sorrow. Because betrayal wounds deeper when it wears the face of love, and Zainab, once so confident, now stood trembling, her carefully built mask cracking and falling away piece by piece, as she screamed denial that sounded hollow even to her own ears, swearing innocence while her body betrayed her with shaking hands and darting eyes. And when Yuam calmly explained the digital trail again, pointing at dates, times, and locations that matched her movements perfectly, the truth tightened around her like a rope, pulling her excuses apart. And Edidiong watched quietly, her heart heavy but her spirit steady, because she had already cried all the tears she had, and what remained was clarity. Zainab tried to flee, but Edidiong's uncle, a man built like an Irako tree, blocked the door, declaring that no one leaves until the matter is settled. And at that moment, the weight of public exposure crashed down on Zainab, for secrets fear light more than punishment, and the elders began to speak, reminding everyone that jealousy is a fire that burns the house of the one who carries it. And under that pressure, Zainab finally collapsed, her strength draining away like water from a broken calabash, falling to the floor as sobs tore through her chest, real tears at last, not the polished ones she had practiced, confessing between broken breaths that she had been consumed by envy, that seeing Edidiong's name where hers should have been had poisoned her thoughts, that the opportunity had presented itself and she had taken it without thinking of the consequences, and her confession hung in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating, confirming every fear Edidiong had tried to deny. Anger surged through the room, curses were spoken, insults hurled, and some demanded police involvement, because hacking, fraud, and betrayal are crimes not only of the heart but of law. And Zainab curled inward, covering her face, her reputation shattering in front of everyone who once trusted her, and Edidiong, standing there, felt a storm inside her, a mixture of pain, rage, grief, and pity, because it is one thing to lose a dream, and another to lose a sister friend to darkness. And for a moment, silence returned, waiting for Edidiong's decision, for she held power now, the power to destroy, to retaliate, to ensure Zainab's punishment followed her like a shadow, and everyone watched, breath held, expecting fury. But what came instead shocked them all, because Edidiong spoke with a voice firm yet calm, saying she forgave Zainab. And the room gasped as if struck by lightning. Even Zainab looked up in disbelief, confused, broken, unsure she had heard correctly, and Edidiong continued, explaining that forgiveness did not mean reconciliation, did not mean trust, did not erase consequences, but it meant she would not carry hatred in her heart, because hatred is a poison that harms the container more than the target, and she refused to let Zainab's jealousy poison her spirit any further. And those words carried a weight heavier than punishment, silencing the room, humbling even the loudest voices. And though Zainab was spared legal ruin that day, she was not spared the consequences of her actions, for a good name, once shattered, is difficult to rebuild. And as she left the house with her head bowed, whispers followed her like shadows, friendships dissolved, respect vanished, and peace abandoned her, while Edidiong stood taller than before, not because she had won, but because she had chosen wisdom over bitterness, proving that true strength is not found in revenge, but in self-mastery. After the storm of exposure passed and Zainab disappeared from Edidiong's life like a shadow fleeing the sun, calm slowly returned to the house. Those scars remained, because forgiveness heals the heart but does not erase memory, and Edidiong spent the following days rebuilding herself quietly, focusing on truth, growth, and peace, while the scholarship board completed their investigation and confirmed the hacking, commending her composure and evidence, even reopening her case. Yet destiny had a larger plan waiting. For 3 weeks later, an email arrived from a different international organization in the United Kingdom, offering Edidiong a full scholarship even greater than the one she had lost, impressed not only by her academic merit but by her integrity, resilience, and grace under betrayal. And this blessing arrived like rain after a long drought, restoring what jealousy had tried to destroy. Joy returned to her home, laughter replacing tears, and Edidiong prepared for a new journey, this time with wisdom packed alongside her dreams. And as she left Kalaba, the ocean that once watched her cry now watched her rise, carrying with her lessons written not in books but in pain, while Zainab, on the other hand, wandered through consequences she could not escape, moving to another city, losing friends, trust, and peace, learning slowly that jealousy is a disease that eats its host before touching its target. And though time softened her shame, it never erased the lesson. For a good name once traded for envy is costly to reclaim. Years passed, and Edidiong thrived in London, completing her studies, becoming a counselor and advocate for young people facing hardship, teaching them that setbacks are not sentences, And that character is revealed not in success, but in response to betrayal. And one quiet evening, a message appeared on her phone from an unfamiliar number, yet the name attached carried history, because it was Zainab, writing a long apology filled with accountability, remorse, and growth, explaining how therapy and reflection had forced her to confront the emptiness jealousy created within her, thanking Edidiong for forgiveness that saved her from total destruction, not asking for friendship, only for peace, and Edidiong read the message slowly, her heart steady, no bitterness rising, only understanding, and she replied simply, wishing her healing and closure, because forgiveness, once given fully, no longer needs reminders. Thus the story closed its circle, teaching that not every smile is loyalty, not every helper is a friend, and not every delay is denial, for some disappointments are redirections wrapped in pain, and the elders were right all along, that the river that forgets its source will one day dry up, and jealousy, like termites, destroys the house from within, while grace builds a foundation that storms cannot shake, reminding us to guard our trust, protect our dreams, and clap for others without counting our losses. Because everyone's time comes, and when it does, it must find a heart clean enough to hold it, and so in the end, Edidiong lost a friend but gained wisdom, lost a scholarship but gained a greater destiny, proving that when truth walks slowly and patiently, it always arrives stronger than lies, and when grace runs its race, jealousy can never keep up.